This is Progressive Insider.
Yeah, Progressive Insider, you know they wiser. Ooh, this that new media company covering everything. I'm talking that news you ain't heard of, cause you know it's getting buried. Social justice, yeah, the stuff you need to know about. Fucking politics that the corporate news won't cover. You know they don't think that you could see under, but you can now, cause the people we cover, they may not be.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Monday, March 23rd. This is week 2 of shelter in place for most of us. So welcome, because you have nothing else better to do. You're with us this morning, and we are so pleased. Not only do we have Andy from Canada, but now we have Mrs. Andy, Deb, who's a nurse from Ontario, to share with us her stories and some insights on what's going on in Canada in response to the COVID crisis. So, hi, Andy. Welcome, Deb.
Hello. Well, hi.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Morning.
How's everything upstairs?
It's good. It's good. It's good upstairs. It's nice and quiet right now.
That's because I'm downstairs.
That's right.
So, Miss Deb, let's get started. Andy had shared with us a little bit last week about your posting for what was it, intake or triage for dealing with people who think that they might have exposure or exhibiting symptoms. So
Right.
Tell us how all of that came to be, because that's not your actual job, right?
That's right.
Okay.
So I work in the operating room, and I was off for March break, which is last week. And I got a call on the Sunday saying that I was being deployed back off of my March break. And I was to report to a boardroom for further instructions. So, of course, I was very anxious because I didn't know what to expect. So when I went in, they told me that I was going to be screening for the COVID virus at Emerge, that I would be the first person that they would come into contact with. And I was going to decide which ones need further screening and which ones actually just go to the Emerge department. So they gave us a questionnaire of exactly what we were supposed to ask. And the questions were, have you traveled outside of Canada? Or have you been exposed to somebody outside of Canada? Also, they asked if I had to ask if they had a fever, if they had a cough, if they had chills, fatigue, some sort of symptoms. And then from there, I had to decipher whether they go into the COVID isolation area or they just go directly to Emerge. So even if somebody came in with a sprained ankle, they had been outside of Canada, they still were actually sent to the isolation area for further triage from the nurse to see if they actually needed to be also screened for the virus. So we had to wear full protective gear, where I wore like hair cover, mask, gown, gloves. The masks have to be changed as soon as they get a little bit saturated. So you have to take them off usually every half hour to an hour. So you're going through masks quite a bit as well.
So what kind of mask are we talking about? A surgical mask? Are we talking about the N95, or what did you have?
So we're talking about surgical masks, because at this point they're saying it's a droplet. So it's not a spray. So meaning that anybody that's probably like an anesthetist or a really close vicinity to the mouth would have to wear an N95 because it's droplet. Whereas if it was a spray, it sprays like an aerosol. So that would be more of N95s all the time. So at this point, they're saying it's a droplet. So they're saying that just regular surgical masks are fine but they still want you to distance yourself from the person. So even as the patients were coming in, we had quite a distance of me talking to them. There was tape down for them to be asked questions.
Okay, so Andy, feel free to jump in at any point here. I'm fascinated with this because so as a surgical nurse, you have all of the proper procedure that you go through on a daily basis to avoid contamination for your patients. So now you have to do this exercise, not only for yourself in front of the public who is in need, but Andy talked a little bit about what you were going to have to do to bring that same level of caution into your own house.
That's right. So I talked to Andy in length about plans here in our household if things really start escalating, which I feel they probably will in the next week or so. Right now, I'm positioned in the operating room, which is not so nerve-wracking, but basically I'll probably be deployed back to doing the coronavirus screening and maybe even actually doing the testing within a week. So I feel that I have to protect my family. So I'm thinking that probably in a week I will be moving myself from the house and going right into our trailer and living out of the trailer by myself to protect my family from getting this and me bringing it home.
Wow. Wow. And you're in Ontario where it's still cold, and you were just telling me a few minutes ago it snowed, and you're expecting more snow.
We're expecting more snow, and I have to be 20 minutes from the hospital, and I'm on call. So I work 3 to 11, and then I'm on call from 11 till 7 in the morning. So unfortunately, usually I go to my best friend that lives right down from the hospital. But of course, we in Canada are trying to self-isolate. So we all are staying in our homes unless we actually need essentials. And we're usually only sending like one person out to go get those essentials. And you actually do distancing, and I'm taking wipes and gloves and things to protect me bringing it home to my family. So of course I can't stay at her house, and then it's good with the weather. The drive back might take me more than 20 minutes. And if you're going back to save a life or limb, you don't want to be more than 20 minutes. So I may have to try to figure out a place in the hospital to stay, which I personally really don't want to. But I got to do what I have to do.
Right. So Andy and I were talking yesterday about your government in Ontario toying with the idea of, and Andy, jump in if I'm wrong, but they haven't yet, but they're toying with the idea of suspending union contract negotiations.
They are, because they don't want to take the time out to, if you need to deploy people in any area of the hospital, they don't have enough time probably to make sure that they're doing all the seniority rights and that sort of thing, because time is of the essence. So I think that they're concerned about taking too much time to, so basically if for an example, I got to stay in the operating room and somebody with higher seniority could potentially bump me out. I think that what they're trying to do is just time is an essence, just keep it flowing. But my worry is that, so that if I worked 3 to 11 and they were completely short on nurses or something, they could deploy me like 11 o'clock till 7 to do an assessment area. I'm not sure if that's the case. And I actually trust that the hospital that I work for will make sure that these nurses stay healthy and rested, because they're not going to be any good to anybody if they get sick or they get exhausted. So I'm hoping that they will just try to do their best to eliminate too much overtime, but it is a kind of scary process that you would not have a contract but I kind of understand it. I was really upset about it when I heard about it yesterday, but the more I think about it, the more I think that it's something that they just have to do, unfortunately.
And let's be clear that it's a defined period of time, right?
It's only for 2 weeks.
14 days, and that's clearly defined that this is only to occur for that amount of time, right? Like, I mean, my entire career as an electrician in a automotive plant, I've been a union employee my entire career. So I know how important it is that union contracts are adhered to, right?
Right.
Want to make sure, because it could set a dangerous impression. But from what I understand, this is kind of like a War Measures Act, for lack of a better term, for
well,
this.
one of the examples that the union is, you can't do a different union's job. For an example, we have porters that actually bring the patients into the operating room. Because I'm a nurse, I am not allowed to take that position of bringing. That's their job. They're a different union, but putting a null and void on this contract, or this would allow people in different positions, not necessarily taking a cleaner and making them a nurse, but taking a cleaner and letting them do portering if we become short on porters or that sort of thing. It allows them to move people around, but hopefully they would know to do it in a way that's not detrimental to patients, which that is something that is reasonable. Take somebody that is a cleaner. There's no reason why they can't push a patient into the operating room if they give instruction. Right. But hopefully they won't take like a cleaner and put them to assess for the virus. And I trust in my company that I work with that they wouldn't do that, that they'd let nurses be nurses.
Sure. So I think my initial concern, I express this with Andy, is we're not talking about a job that's easy to do. It's physically taxing. You cannot make any mistakes. So you're going through a 10, 12-hour shift as it is, and then asking these people potentially to do another one on top of it. So we know that the way the body works is the less rest you get, the more susceptible you are to not only getting an illness, it may not be this, but something else, and the stress of the work itself can really be detrimental. So my question was, when we have these leaders looking at things that are within their purview, so we have nurses and CNAs and all of these people who are already credentialed, we do also have second, third year CNAs and nurses in colleges and universities and around the area who may not have right now the certification, but they have the basic training. So when you're talking about porters and things like that, could these students not be filling some of those lower tier responsibilities? I mean, they've already been trained on taking vitals and triage and things like that. So rather than my suggestion would be, rather than taxing you with your expertise, why not pair you up with 2 or 3 of these students, second, third year students?
And that could potentially be what they could do, for sure. Now, I know I have friends that have already been called that have retired, and they've already asked them to be on hold to see if they would be willing to come back. We've had doctors called as well to see if they would come back. So because you got to remember that some of these healthcare workers are going to get sick, so they need to be replaced. And so that's going to delete or deplete some of the nurses that are needed. So bringing back some of our retired people, the problem is some of the retired people are older, so you want to be safe with them as well. Now, one of my girlfriends that actually has been called, she's only in her late 50s. And I think she's quite willing to come back if she's needed. But yeah, potentially they probably could bring at least some people from that. Maybe all they need is just their placement in the hospital. They're almost done, and actually put them in positions that they could use for further advancement to look after these patients. Because from what I see, it's going to be depleted as far as healthcare goes. So my daughter, for example, she's taking paramedic. She's almost finished her first year. So, they may potentially reach out to her and ask her if she can do a couple things. It's hard to know. It depends on what happens. I do believe that Canada is really doing a good thing with self-isolating. We are taking it seriously. There are those people that don't believe that it's real. It is real. Self-isolating is going to save a lot of lives. And so hopefully, we don't have to do a full lockdown, but I think Canada is willing to do that because you can see in other countries that have done that, how well they have done.
Right. So with equipment, we know that in the US and in other areas, there is a tremendous shortage, not only in masks, but in the equipment needed for patients who need intensive care with breathing issues and other things like this. So we have seen people, just regular volunteers with a sewing machine, making cloth masks and things like this. So what is the situation from your perspective in Canada? Because as an American, we have a different perception of what healthcare is like in Canada, but then nobody seems to have been really prepared with the supply line. Like the supply and demand was just nowhere near what it needed to be to meet this kind of crisis.
Well, I do believe that if it gets really, really, really bad, which I believe it will before it gets better, that our supplies will be depleted. There's no doubt about it. And you want to try, and that's why self-isolation is so important, because then you're freeing up some of those masks. They are asking businesses here in just Peterborough itself to bring in masks that they're not using in their businesses while their businesses are closed. I have a girlfriend actually that's quite willing to make masks, and I'm going to try to get some supplies to her, materials that we use on gowns that are like a flexible paper. I'm hoping that they'll allow me to bring them home so that she can make masks out of them. Because she's a seamstress, and my stepmother actually is already making masks right now, and she is a seamstress as well. So I kind of reach out to people that are seamstress, get on the internet and see what you can do to try to make some masks, even if it's just for people that are out and about to get groceries, would be helpful.
Right. That absolutely makes sense. Andy, is there anything that I'm missing here that you think, as a family member?
Canada's kind of I think all countries are to some extent in a wait and see kind of period, but our prime minister got on this quite a bit earlier than the US administration did, and started announcing things, and you have to remember that strategically Canada may be in a little bit better position to deal with this, because there's a tenth of our population, a tenth of the United States population in Canada, right? There's 331 million people in the US, and there's only 33 to 35 million in Canada, and our country's slightly bigger. So there's a lot more space for us to self-isolate, right?
Yeah.
And so because our government seems to have responded faster, a lot of people are self-isolating. My daughter and Deb found a store that was fully stocked on the weekend, that wasn't busy, that was had protocols in place where people had to stay a certain amount of space away from one another, and we completely stocked up on food. So it's unclear how badly we're going to be hit, because we're already talking about, getting stuff ready in case. Right?
Well, and also the government, one of the things that I think is very helpful is the government has put in place to help people financially, because people, want to go to work because they want to get paid. So I think that they've reached out to banks, and I think that they're allowing them to have 6 months without payments if they need it for mortgages. They're having a fund for people that can't work. If you aren't eligible for EI, that would be able to get an emergency fund to help with finances, which I think is allowing people to be able to stay home without worrying about their money at home, which I think is huge. People, if they feel like they're afraid that they're not going to get the money to pay their bills, then they're going to push themselves to work when they shouldn't be.
Okay, wow. The contrast between Canada and the US, completely different. And even though, Andy, you said that it's a smaller population and that sort of thing, when we compare GDP to population, that entire argument goes away. So let's look at this for a second when we talk about what Canada is doing.
Sure.
You've got, they're mindful not only of the commerce and industry, but as it goes down to renters and people who have to pay their mortgage and the average worker. Here in the United States, I was just reading Pelosi and Schumer and McConnell are still fighting over who can get benefits, and they're focused on unemployment. So we had talked about last week in on our channel, we had talked about how unemployment benefits don't reach everyone because we have such a large portion of our gig economy, people who are temporary workers who don't get unemployment, who don't get those kind of benefits. So even in Congress right now, we have people working on the wrong problem.
Yes.
And one of the proposals that came out that I think is an amazing out of the box thinking was Rashida Tlaib had proposed, it's kind of funny when you hear it, but she had proposed pulling out a rule that allows the US Treasury to mint $1 trillion coin. So she's proposing, let's mint 2 of these $1 trillion coins and we'll hand them back and use all of that money to pay every American and everyone in this country. So this is American citizens, naturalized people here who are undocumented, everybody, because I think we're learning that we all are in this together, allowing those people to get the money that they need to buy the food that they need so that they can stay healthy and not spread this to other people. So we are still in the midst of negotiating these things. Rashida is now writing this up to submit it because Pelosi and Schumer could not get it together with the Republicans. As of yesterday, this still failed. Now we have to go back to the drawing board on their proposal. So you've got Rashida's coming in, expected to be submitted either today or tomorrow. We're still nowhere there. And what you're seeing on social media is people are now starting to forward the idea of a rent strike for April 1st. So this means mortgage and renters and all of these things to not pay it, because on the flip side of it, we saw the Fed dedicate $4 trillion for the repo market bailout. It is a bailout. I don't care what the economists say. It's a bailout.
Yes, it is.
And then pledge an additional $1 trillion every day for the month of March to April to the banks. So the banks are the ones who write the mortgage. They are getting the help that they need. But the people who hold the mortgage, these are the landlords and the homeowners, are not getting that benefit. And then the renters are not getting that benefit. So what we do here in the US is we help a certain portion of our economy and then stop. So we stop right at that 2%. And everyone below that is not getting any assistance so far.
Rugged individualism.
You're right.
Even us in Canada right now, they're taking all the homeless people that are on the streets and they're putting them in hotels.
Yeah, you see, California
to get them off the street. Yeah.
California's doing that. And so what happened is because we have such a failure of leadership at a federal level, each one of the states, we're now acting autonomously as 50 separate countries who don't have the budget and financial strength of the federal government. So California is taking abandoned federal buildings and hotels and renting them for homeless. Here in Chicago, we haven't done that. And we have a significant homeless population, and it just snowed again. So each and every one of these states, you have a disparate response, not just to the people in the state, but then to the virus as a whole, because we have so many states who have not mandated shelter in place, especially in the South.
And see, and when you think about it, it makes sense. rather than putting them shelters and they're all like in one room or one big room and lots of beds, you're better to put them separate in a hotel room to keep them away from each other so that they don't pass the virus along. It's incredibly smart, I think, to do this. Put them in hotels. Nobody is going to a hotel at this point. They're staying home, we hope.
Right.
They're not traveling. They're not going anywhere, you know.
Yeah, I think the spring breakers have gone home now.
Yeah. Yeah, they should have shut down that beach, to be quite honest. It makes me very scared for the United States because those people go home to their families.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. Well,
all over the country, right?
yeah, so it was Texas, primarily in the United States. We have Texas, South Carolina, Florida. These are vacation spots for spring break, and they rely so heavily on that tourism that they were willing to look the other way. And the same thing happened. We're in the middle of our elections here, and Andy heard me rant about it the day after. Here in Illinois, we went forward with our primary elections, even though we were telling people to stay apart. We had them squished together in these tiny polling places. We had other polling places shut down because people were sick. So the entire thing went against our state constitution. And then a few days later, our governor required a shelter in place order, the same order that was supposed to have been used to put off our primary for the safety of the public. So it's kind of like this bait and switch that we're using here in our country to the detriment of the public.
Now, didn't the governor also come out in favor of Joe Biden the day before the primary?
He sure did. He sure did.
My shocked look.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think, you know, Andy, you said it best. The silver lining on all of this is all of these narratives that we grew up with, that our parents learned, are starting to fall away when you see that there's no foundation, no logic, no reason that these policies are in place, like the forced austerity on the left and the rugged individualism, pull yourself up by your bootstraps on the right. Both of these are part of the great lie that we are seeing the consequences of right now.
Would you like to hear a fun fact?
Yes.
Fun fact. The cost of keeping the stock market liquid for the next 30 days at $1 trillion a day will pay for Medicare for all for the next 10 years.
So we just traded 10 years of 310 million people for a few stocks.
Yeah.
What happened to the market and the freedom of the market? And if you fail, you fail.
Because the problem is that the current market is being shown as the only indicator that the current occupant of the White House is pointing to show how good a job he's doing and wants to get reelected.
So what we're saying is we're going to use this arbitrary point to show the performance of one individual, and we're going to trade an entire country for that. So let's take this argument a little bit further. Let's say like American Airlines over the weekend, I've watched their stock, and we were tempted to buy in because it's a penny stock now. And that's the only stock that I buy, penny stock. So they went to the Fed and said, if you don't bail us out, we are going to have to lay people off. And I said, okay, so you're going to lay people off and they'll have a year of unemployment, and those accounts are already funded because the wages that those people earned were put into a savings account directly for this purpose. So those people will be fine. And then we're going to put an extra bonus on top of that once Congress gets their act together here. So the people will be fine, but the executives will no longer have a place to go either. And I am fully confident that the people who are doing the work will find employment faster than all of the C-suite executives.
Yes.
Why am I crying over a C-suite executive?
Well, you know, on top of that, the Mars Candy Corporation has asked for a bailout, right?
Mars Candy, really?
Yeah, yeah. They've, you know, the Chocolate Bar Corporation
Mhm.
has called for a bailout because of, you know, they're obviously going to be affected, but people can't go to the stores and buy their product, right? So you've got all of these corporations that want to be bailed out now. Pretty much all of them, you know. But that the reason that happens is because the government has shown that that's who they're willing to help.
Mm.
Right?
Our dog is trying to tear down the door.
Oh, well, it is hair of the dog.
Right. Wait, we were just talking about the Mars Candy Company. So was it Hershey?
No, it wasn't Hershey. It was, well, maybe, it probably isn't. It's probably maybe.
Hershey's upset that we're talking about Mars.
Yeah, maybe that's what it's about.
That's hilarious.
So one of the things that I just wanted to say about the actual virus that's hitting us, the advice that I give to people is that if you get it, that's okay. Just self-isolate, stay home, take Tylenol for the fever, right? If you start developing a shortness of breath, that's when you go to the hospital. But in the meantime, it's not necessary really to get testing done, because the testing will tell you, yes, that you have it, but it's not necessary for you to know. And if you have it and you potentially go to the hospital, you are going to maybe spread it to other people, but also you're going to be exposed to maybe other things, and it's going to bring down your immune system. A lot of people can ride out the storm on their own by just self-isolating, rest, warm liquids, not cold liquids, but warm liquids, and rest. And after a few days, they can come out of it on their own without being exposed to any more. So my best advice to people is to stay home. If you have to self-isolate, then you pick a room that's in your house that's maybe has your own bathroom, right? And you stay in there and you don't come out, to try to less affect the people that are in your home, and let people bring stuff to you, right? You can wear a mask or they can wear a mask, it doesn't matter. And then wash those dishes that they use right away with gloves. Don't put it in the dishwasher and let it sit there. So actually wash it. You can have cleaner and hand sanitizer just outside the room, that sort of thing. My best advice is just to stay home as much as you can. And if you get it, then just self-isolate.
So let me get this straight. You're suggesting that people don't actually need to get tested to treat this seriously?
You don't have to get it tested. As far as I'm concerned, I have actually been on a phone with somebody or on Messenger with somebody I thought that maybe potentially had it. And I just guided her through by telling her to take Tylenol to keep the fever down, self-isolate. She lived alone, so she didn't have to worry about anybody else. And I guided her through for 3 days and she got better. And that's like a lot of the time, that's what's going to happen unless you're elderly or you have other health issues. Those people that are vulnerable or that have other health issues, that's maybe different. They might want to go to Emerge and get tested and get treated because they may need a little bit more help. But for the young and healthy, my advice is really just to ride the storm. It's just like a flu. If you get a flu, you don't go out and about. You ride the storm, right? Some people just want to know, do I have this virus or not? I just want to know. It's not necessary for you to know unless it gets worse, as far as I'm concerned.
Right, exactly. What is that information going to do for you?
It does nothing. All they do is they test you. They send you home anyway. So they do the testing. It's a swab in the nose. They send you home for 14 days self-isolation, and then they call you whether it's positive or negative, and then they're going to give you the same advice that I'm saying, is they're going to say, ride it out, take the Tylenol, drink the warm liquids, rest. And then if it gets worse and you start getting shortness of breath, then you come back.
That was the exact advice that my doctor gave me, and he was frustrated too because he in this country could not even order a test for me because I could not point to someone else who had tested positive. So we have a little bit of a politicization on the testing in this country because it's almost like, you know, with the stock market, the measure of how well we're doing are the fewer cases and tests. But so you had myself who, my doctor, I love him because he has no filter and no chill. He's like,
Nice.
I was like, could this just be a flu? And he's like, don't be a dumbass. You know you have it. He's like,
And the next question is, once you have it, I'm not even sure if you can get it again. I don't think so, but I could be wrong. I don't know. And
right.
that's the thing, is you think you still, these people that have it or think they have it, they need to still self-isolate anyway, just because we just don't know everything about it yet. And even our testing here, our criteria is if you've traveled outside of Canada or if you've been exposed to somebody outside of Canada, that will change probably in the next, we're probably a few days, because now we're getting community to community spreading. So now I did just read today that there's some doctors and nurses, healthcare workers that have got sick in Toronto. So that what it may change is they may actually say we need to test the healthcare workers so that they are not giving it to other people as well. And or they need to self-isolate, right? So probably with the healthcare workers, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to go through this. But we can't even come into the hospital right now. If you have traveled outside of Canada or been exposed to somebody outside of Canada, you're not even allowed in as a healthcare worker.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I was reading a story about a bus driver in Tokyo. And so all of this is still fluid. But this particular bus driver, they're looking at whether she had a false negative or a false positive with her, because she had done a tour group where two of the people on the tour had later tested positive. She was negative, and then she developed the virus and tested positive, recovered, went back to work, and then got it again. So
She
they're
did,
trying. Yeah, so they're trying to see, well, was this was the testing not properly done? Was she not properly treated? Is this a continuation of the same incident, or is it somebody who, the first known case of somebody getting it again? So all of this is really fluid. So to your point, protecting doctors and nurses and the clinicians who are caring for those most in need should be the first order of business, right?
And that's not just nurses, that's paramedics, firefighters, police, military. They all need to be protected too, because if you end up getting like a lockdown in a city, then you're going to have military come in. You want them healthy, you want the police healthy, you want the firefighters healthy, right? So it's all those people. And the problem is with this virus is that people can walk around with this virus and have not one symptom, never been exposed to anybody that they know of, but they could have been exposed in the grocery store, but they're walking around with this virus and they can give it to others. So that's why this self-isolation is so important. If we self-isolate, we will stop it. We're still going to get like a rise for sure. There's no doubt about it. Self-isolation is the only thing that's going to bring that rise down quickly.
Absolutely. And Andy, we'll post that the link that we shared in our own chat with the bell curve and flattening that curve.
Yes.
It was specific to the United States, but I think there are other countries in it. But it showed the difference in a single chart between doing nothing, as like Louisiana and Alabama are doing, and then a state like Illinois or California who have done something, and what that curve of cases looks like as a detriment to the overall health system and economy for that state.
Well, I think that with Canada, one of the things that probably was the hardest for people is the Prime Minister came out and said, I want people to self-isolate. Well, at that point, we only had very, very few people sick here. There was maybe like 18 in BC, and there was like around that in Ontario. So people are saying, I think you're overreacting. Well, he wasn't. He was correct in doing that. You self-isolate now. And now they're getting it. They're understanding that he was shutting it down quickly so that, and people, I think that because we had the pushback, which we did, we had pushback because they're saying, like, there's only a few people sick. Why are we shutting down? Well, because that will decrease it getting worse. And he did it right away. And so his wife got sick. I think that's part of it. His wife got it. And so it was very real to him. It was right in his face. So he saw what happened with his wife and how scary it can be with his children and himself, especially being the head of this country. He felt that he needs to shut this down now, and I'm pleased with what he's done. I really am, and even our premier on Ontario has really stepped it up. Whether people like these prime ministers or not, it doesn't matter. I think that just doing the right thing is going to be the positive thing that's happening all over the world. They just have to do the right thing.
Right. Yeah. And you speak to the actions mattering. So again, we have this nice contrast where our leaders here in the United States know what was going on around the world, were briefed on it, and then either chose to profit by selling stock while telling their own constituents, don't worry about it, it's a hoax or whatnot. They were meeting with other heads of state who had tested positive. They knew that those people were sick and some had died. And instead we drug our feet here. That's all there is to it. So the response in Canada, I think, is a nice, clear contrast to what could have been. So I'm happy that some of our states here are now taking it seriously, but unfortunately we have so many states who as of yet are not. So.
Well, what I think probably is going to need to happen in the United States, as far as I'm concerned, is the borders around each state need to be closed. People can't come in and out of the states.
Well, I think
because
that's a problem.
Then you can do it more of a community thing, like a statewide, and try to like keep your state. But I mean, I don't know how feasible that is, but that would be the best thing to do, because you got places like, I think California or that are Washington that are really not doing well. You can have people going over the borders between the states. They're going to transfer it to the other states. If you can try to keep some of your country healthy, it's going to help with the other ones, because you can actually use some of those healthcare workers from those states to help in the places that need it.
Well, we ran into problems like Italy was problematic, because what they did was they shut down regions within Italy. So what happened was people would leave their regions to go to other that weren't under lockdown, right? Yep. So the problem is you're just moving the pandemic from one place to another. What they finally figured out, what the Chinese figured out early, is you lock down your entire country. Everybody stays where they are. You don't move around. You stay put, and then you try to deal with the numbers as they come.
Yeah, even in Canada right now, the people that are self-isolating, if they find out, if anybody lets the police know that this person is supposed to be self-isolating and they're out, they can be fined.
Well, some of those states here that have done it, there is a fine in place, or a mechanism to add some financial incentive through a misdemeanor or whatnot, but others still haven't done it. So you brought up an interesting point. How would Illinois lock down its borders aside from shelter in place orders? And you know, I don't have an answer for that, because what the problem that we have in our country is we have this disconnect between states as a sovereign entity, which they really aren't, and then the United States as a country. So we operate legally, business-wise, and structure as 50 different countries within a bigger one. So like Illinois has certain things that we manufacture here and a lot that we have to import from other states. So one of the things I was looking at is here in our country, we have an administration that is openly hostile to immigrants and other people who come into our country for resources. And yet, in this crisis, we had a number of what's called an H-2A visa issued in Mexico, in Monterrey, and we invited a bunch of Mexican nationals in under these visas to work, and we're sending them to Mississippi, Kentucky, North Carolina, Michigan, parts of California to actually harvest food to distribute to the rest of the country. So we had to import workers to do the work and make sure that all of the other states have the supply chain for food that is needed to address not only regular day-to-day activity, but the extra fresh fruit and vegetable requirements that we need to address this. How would we possibly lock down?
The only thing I could think of is if they ban people from leaving their state.
Then we're talking about shutting down interstates. Or having
that's a problem because they don't have the infrastructure to do that.
Yeah,
right?
they don't.
There's
but
no
you know what?
restriction.
Even if they said we are banning people from going from state to state, even if you got 50 or 75% that did it, that's only 25% that are actually moving. It might help. Who knows? It's hard to know.
Yeah.
United States is very different, right? We're so spread out in Canada. You know, and actually, I think the Canadians are pretty good with, you know, instruction of doing, when they tell you to do something, it's not that you're going to be reprimanded, but I think that they're reasonable enough to say, okay, you know what, I think I need to stay at home, let's say, and you know, it's a hard situation for sure.
Well, I think culturally in the United States, we have such doubt of our own government. Even my local, like if my mayor said something, the natural response is, he's full of it, right? So in our country, we have to actually see it. And you can see that that is true in every policy shift that we've had, like marriage equality. It didn't start to become favorable until our LGBTQ population started to talk to their own family members so that they could see, oh, this is one of mine that is being affected. So here in this country, as we started to talk about, well, I'm sick, so I'm going to shelter in place, and here's why I'm going to do that, then the person next to me goes, oh, I get it, because I can see you and it's tangible and it's not abstract. So this was my first response to Rashida's policy about minting $1 trillion coin. We do not need to mint the coin. We don't. But in our country, the abstract is so profoundly misunderstood that we need to have a tangible thing. And it doesn't matter if they mint this coin out of copper or plastic or whatever. People need to have that. And so unless I see someone else who's sick and recognize why it matters to me, I'm not going to take it seriously. And I think that's the difference between Canadians and Americans, because I don't feel like you guys have that fundamental distrust of neighbor and your government the way that we do.
I think that that's a fair statement. I think, you know, like, I mean, you have an economy that's completely run, you know, by the market system, right? It thinks of its population, instead of thinking it as people, they think of it as market opportunities, right? And so things only happen if they're profitable in the United States, which is unfortunate, right? And there's the phone.
Oh, there's the call. Well, it's just a few minutes before the top of the hour, so we can go ahead and start wrapping up here. I got through the big points that I wanted to get through with Rashida's policy and the H-2 visas, and this wonderful conversation with Nurse Debbie, who is really painted a good picture for people to understand what it looks like on the front line. Not just in Canada, but we're mirroring these same things here in the United States. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope it made sense, everything I said.
Yeah.
Just stay safe and stay home and don't go out unless you absolutely have to. That's my biggest advice.
Very good. Andy, you got anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
We're almost at the hour here, so we should probably go. I ran out of coffee 10 minutes ago, right?
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Miss Debbie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Andy, and to everyone else, we appreciate it. And tune in on Wednesday. We're going to have a fantastic guest who is she's a streamer for a living. She plays video games, but more than just that, she is creating this community of acceptance and positivity. And so we're going to talk to her about how she maintains that balance with all this chaos going on around us. So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and have a good day, and please try to stay safe.
Hi guys. Just wanted to pass on this information. It was sent to me by a colleague who has a friend that works at Dr. Negrin, which is the main hospital on our island. It's obviously in Spanish, so I'm just going to read it and translate it for you. This is what it says. The Chinese now understand the behavior of the COVID-19 virus thanks to autopsies that they have carried out. This virus is characterized by obstructing respiratory pathways with thick mucus that solidifies and blocks the airways and lungs. So they have discovered that in order to be able to apply a medicine, you have to open and unblock these airways so that the treatment can be used to take effect. However, all of this takes a number of days. Their recommendations for what you can do to safeguard yourself are: number 1, drink lots of hot liquids, coffee, soups, teas, warm water. In addition, take a sip of warm water every 20 minutes because this keeps your mouth moist and washes any of the virus that's entered your mouth into your stomach, where the gastric juices will neutralize it before it can get to the lungs. Number 2, gargle with an antiseptic in warm water, like vinegar or salt or lemon, every day if possible. Number 3, the virus attaches itself to hair and clothes. Any detergent or soap kills it, but you must take a bath or a shower when you get in from the street. Avoid sitting down anywhere and go straight to the bathroom or shower. If you cannot wash your clothes daily, hang them in direct sunlight, which also neutralizes the virus. Number 4, wash metallic surfaces very carefully because the virus can remain viable on these for up to 9 days. Take note and be vigilant about touching handrails and door handles, etc. I guess within your own house as well, you can make sure that you are keeping those clean and wiping them down regularly. Number 5, don't smoke. Number 6, wash your hands every 20 minutes using any soap that foams. Do this for 20 seconds and wash your hands thoroughly. Number 7, eat fruits and vegetables. Try to elevate your zinc levels, not just your vitamin C levels. Number 8, animals do not spread the virus to people. This is person-to-person transmission. Number 9, try to avoid getting the common flu, I guess because this just already weakens your system, and try to avoid eating and drinking cold things. And number 10, if you feel any discomfort in your throat or a sore throat coming on, attack it immediately using the above methods. The virus enters the system this way and remains for 3 or 4 days within the throat before it passes into the lungs. Good luck to everyone. Take care of yourself and pass this information along if you wish, he says. So, I've heard a lot of the same thing from a lot of different sources, so it seems to me that this is now kind of very credible advice that people can be taking on board to try and protect themselves. Hope it helps. Bye.